everyone, and welcome to Gutter Glitter. I'm your host, Kirsty, and this is the show where each week I read you a chapter from my memoir by the same name. This week we are up to chapter 8. Whenever you look at me, I wish I was her. This is a lyric taken from an Adele song called Cold Shoulder from, I believe, her very first album, 19. And if I'm correct, she labeled those first several albums. I think the next one was 20. Don't quote me on that. Those first several albums correlating with her age. I mean, come on, Adele. Like, give us the rest of us a chance. She's just amazing. I was obsessed with that first album. Would play it on repeat back in the day, 2008, when I was going to and from uni, where I was studying classical voice at the time. I'm going to play a little snippet of Cold Shoulder to set the scene and give you a taste of the album. So if you do like it, you can go and have a listen right after this. As always, please like the pod, and if you can share it, that's amazing. It just helps me get to more listeners and hopefully be able to help people feel a little bit less alone with my stories. And, you know, it helps me feel less alone too when people connect with me and can relate. So, you know, share the love, share the wealth, and share the trauma. If you want more information, there's a Linktree in the show notes. It'll take you basically anywhere you'd like to go. There's links to buy a hard copy or an e-copy of the book. You can listen to some of my music. You can listen to the whole soundtrack. There's a Spotify playlist of all the songs that I have utilized throughout the book as inspiration for the chapter. The world's your oyster. Social media, everything like that is all linked through there. And here is a little snippet of Cold Shoulder by Adele.
You say it's all in my head, and the things I think just don't make sense. So where you been then? Don't go all coy. Don't turn it around on me like it's my fault. See, I can see that look in your eyes, the one that shoots at me each and every time. You breaks me with your cold shoulder. Whenever you look at me, I wish I was her. You shower me with words made of knives. Whenever you look at me, I wish I was her.
Chapter 8. Whenever you look at me, I wish I was her. Soundtrack, Adele, Cold Shoulder. By the time I had the surgery, Simon and I had been together for 2.5 years. I was deeply in love with him. Lovely, gentle, predictable, safe Simon. We had already been through so much together within such a short time. With hindsight, it's clear why I became so dangerously codependent. But at the time, we were just trying to survive as best we could. Codependency feels right when you're young. It's powerful and intense, like the love you see play out on the silver screen. It's what you imagine love is meant to feel like, in that it is never peaceful. For better or worse, you sit right at the pinnacle of your emotions, meaning things can change rapidly and frequently. I don't ever remember learning about peaceful love when I was young. Love was always sold as passionate, earth-shatteringly intense, and addictive. I surprised myself with how much I loved Simon, especially as we had nothing in common. While he was watching AFL, I would hide in the other room illegally streaming reality shows from the US. I found listening to the dulcet screeches of Tamra Judge and Vicky Gunvalson soothing, and he anxiously rooted for whoever his favourite sports team was. I should really know that. It's simple, really. We fell in love because we were young, open-hearted and insanely attracted to one another. Friends would often remark how different we were, labeling me as the artistic wild child and him as the quiet and sensible IT nerd. But isn't that the basis for every great sitcom ever made? We were the ultimate odd couple. I can't list the reasons I fell for him. It wasn't like that. I wish I could, because I'm sure it would help me make sense of everything. But for me, it was completely emotional. Being with him felt like my heart was home. Is that love? I had never felt anything like it before. It knocked me off my feet and changed my whole world. I believed he was the one. My very own Ryan Gosling was right before me, and all my wallowing and crying along to Jules songs had finally paid off. Simon was my first big love. I was still young and naive enough to throw myself entirely into our relationship without an ounce of fear. Once I fell in love, I could hardly remember life before him. It seemed dull and lifeless. That's the saddest thing about first loves. The word first. The implication being that there will be others. That somehow this feeling will come to a close, and all you have built and given your heart to so freely will end. Because once you come to realize it was only a first, you can never fall the same way again. You can never be as delightfully naive or free with your heart. And to me, that's the saddest thing in the world. During my home recovery, Simon would visit me every other day. The word visit doesn't really do him justice. He took care of me. He took the burden off Mum for a while by getting me medicine and ice packs for the pain. He'd take me for short walks around the garden, which is important in the prevention of scar tissue. And he'd lay beside me as we watched terrible daytime TV. He was doing all the right things on paper, but in reality, he was disengaged. In many ways, my disappointment was entirely of my own making. I blame 90s heartthrobs Freddie Prinze Jr. and Shane West for many of my idealistic dreams. If all it took to turn the ugly duckling into a clumsy yet beguiling beauty was a little lip smacker and a push-up bra, my story would have taken quite a different turn. I had learned from watching Nicholas Sparks' film adaptations that the sick girl is actually a starring role. Once again, my suffering would all be worth it because true love was awaiting me on the other side. In my fantasy, I would lay draped weakly over a chaise longue, one hand to my forehead, the other falling by my wayside, as he, the infamous faceless he, held my hand and read to me from one of my favourite books. Whilst on the verge of death, he would ask for my hand in marriage, and as a single tear ran lamely down my cheek, I would choke out, "Yes." Now, having lived a rather different experience, I am quite sure old Nicky Sparks has never, not once, not ever, been around a sick young woman, because in reality, it looks more like this. There I would lay, slumped, clammy and pale with a greenish tinge in my bed, damp with sweat from the OxyContin and morphine seeping from my pores. My cold hands filled with drips and needles that he is too afraid to disturb. Go unheld for weeks. I notice, but say nothing, planting the first seed of resentment that my fairy tale has been dismissed. Rather than ask for my hand in marriage, he asks me if we really must watch another episode of Ready Steady Cook, to which my reply is a forceful yes, as tears of frustration fall from my face, now red with fury. Physically, Simon was with me, but mentally he was miles away. I became obsessed with the idea that he was seeing someone else. If he was even slightly late to see me, I'd have already gone over every possible explanation in my head 10 times over. I would cycle through worry that he had been in an accident, to rage that he was cheating, and eventually come around to hope that he might be out buying me get-well-soon flowers. By the time he would arrive, I'd been on such an emotional roller coaster that discovering he was late just because would throw me into a tailspin. How dare you not be dead? The high-dose painkillers I was ingesting on a daily basis were making me paranoid. I could no longer trust my own judgment. So instead of listening to my gut, I ignored red flags. The medication and lack of proper sleep took hold, driving me to the point of insanity. Late one night, I awoke in a cold sweat, convinced a serial killer had snuck into the house and was butchering my family one by one. Normal. The house was dead silent. But that's because he was a stealthy murderer, I rationalized. I hurried to strap on my back brace and slid into my fluffy slippers, ready to save the day. Next thing I know, I'm standing in the kitchen in the dark, wielding a butcher's knife. I shuffled into my brother's room. In his slumber, he heard the bedroom door slide open to see my head peeking through the crack, not dissimilar to Jack Nicholson in The Shining. "Kirst?" he asked groggily. Nothing," I announced, knife hidden behind my back. For the time being, I was satisfied that he was alive, although still concerned someone might be lurking in the shadows. Then I made my way down to the other side of the house to check on my parents. Their obnoxious snores alerted me to their well-being. Relieved, I returned to the kitchen and carefully replaced the knife in the cutlery drawer. I made my way back to my room, unclasped my back brace, and eased myself into bed. Everything hurt. Shuffling from one side of the house to the other was easily the most activity I had done in months. As the adrenaline subsided, the pain came flooding back, and with it came the realization that I had finally lost my mind. That, and I was totally and utterly helpless. Had there actually been an intruder, there was nothing I could have done about it. I imagined they would have taken one look at the crippled girl in her PJs and laughed. But hey, a girl's gotta try. When I wasn't rescuing my family from potential axe murderers, I would occasionally have visitors. Once you've been housebound for a long time, people tend to get bored, or simply forget about you once they have made their obligatory appearance. A lot of people dropped off during this time, but not Sam. Twice a week, for the duration of my recovery, she would stop by with wonderfully mind-numbing magazines and soup from our favourite cafe. She would read me this week's scandalous highlights from Kay Stew cheating on our Pats to Amanda Bynes' latest DUI, Sam was on chemo and recovering from surgery herself, yet she never forgot about me. She never put me in the too hard basket and looked away. She would have done that for anyone. She was thoughtful and generous, unlike anyone I have known. During one of my daily walks around the garden, I was confronted by a red fox. I stood frozen in my pink dressing gown and matching slippers as it stared me dead in the eye. Fuckity fuck. I knew the foxes of this area. These weren't a run-of-the-mill, hunt in the dead of night for rodents type of fellas. These were bold, come out in the broad light of day to eat our entire hen house motherfuckers. My heart was pounding. If this thing charged at me, there was nothing I could do. I couldn't run. I could barely walk. We stared at each other with wide eyes, each debating who would make the first move. Right, I thought. Let's do this. I was closest to the basement door, but I didn't know if it was unlocked. The alternative was to make my way to the back door, up a flight of stairs. I decided to risk the basement. As quickly as a woman with a fractured spine and sheep's wool slippers can move, I shuffled in tiny little footsteps toward the door. The fox jolted, as if it was about to make a leaping jump. Welp, this is how I die, I resigned. I can see the headlines now. Girl survives spinal resection, only to be mauled by a rabid fox. Just as I pulled the door open, I saw the beast scurry to freedom. I would live to see another day. When I made it inside, I recounted the horrifying story of life and death to my loving family, who naturally found this hilarious because they are all sociopaths. Life was hard. I had limited bodily agency, was paranoid, and I sensed Simon pulling further away with each passing day. So, when I suspected him of having an affair because he was smirking into his phone more than usual, I didn't know whether to trust my instincts or if I was rapidly unraveling. I've since learned that two things can be true. There was a new girl at his work who quickly became the highlight of his days. At first, he avoided talking to me about her or made sure not to mention her gender. But over time, he couldn't help himself. He would come over and excitedly tell me how they had made their mundane retail jobs more fun by mucking around throughout the day. Pfft, see if I care. I knew I was useless right now. I couldn't go out on romantic dinners or join parties with his friends. I couldn't wildly fuck him the way an energetic 23-year-old should. When we did attempt to have sex, not only was it fueled by my intense fear of losing him, but I would have to wear my sexiest back brace. Like a bulletproof vest, it provided an all too real barrier between us. Then he would have to perch atop me delicately, like a daddy longlegs, limbs outstretched and balancing on a knife's edge as to not crush my frail bones. Hut, 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 hut. I had no filter of niceties due to my pain, and often I was demanding and short with those around me. If I needed medication, I needed it now, because I knew what it felt like to go without. If I needed sleep, that took priority because it was the few hours in the day when my body wasn't in constant throbbing agony. I needed him so much. I needed him for comfort, and I needed him to walk me to the toilet. He was my love and my carer. which was increasingly hard to navigate. I was frustrated and he was bored. On top of that, he was still freshly grieving his mother. I knew he needed to find joy where he could, and I wasn't the best source of that right now. But the more he smiled into the dim light of that phone screen and the less he did with me, the more intense my fear grew. I felt it eat away at my gut, churning and twisting like a poison gradually taking hold. That little voice from the depths of my mind that had quietened down in recent years was back, and she was vicious. He's found someone else. She's prettier. She's fun. She's healthy. You are a symbol of pain, grief, and death. A reminder that his mother is never coming back and everything he loves will die. You are poison. You are the cancer. Whether a symptom of my paranoia or confirmation that I was right all along, I later found out that the infamous workplace she was more than a friendly colleague. One day, while he was smiling into his phone, I caught a glimpse of their correspondence. I want you. It was simple, short, and enough for my heart to drop into my stomach. I lay in bed, heaving with tears. Tears that tore at my healing wounds and heart. He admitted that they had been flirting, secretly sexting, and coffee dating after work for months throughout my recovery. He would be late to see me because he was with her, having fun. Fun. Something I was unable to provide. I don't know if anything physical ever happened between them, and I don't need to, because he had been infallible prior to this. He had been mine. Mum was in my ear telling me, it's just a bit of a flirt, let it go. And I wanted to. Perhaps if I'd been healthy, it would have been different, but I couldn't. He had shone a light on the deepest of my insecurities, and there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't be better. I couldn't do more. I was as vulnerable as a person could be, isolated from everything that resembled the life I knew, and completely entrusted my heart and my life to this man. He had my health in his hands, and I trusted he would protect me until I could be me again. He failed at the first hurdle. I wish I had paid more attention to that instead of following my dumbass heart. I spend a lot of time thinking about love. Does everyone feel it uniquely, or is there an underlying sameness that connects us all? Can true love last a lifetime, or is it futile? If given enough time, will we tire of the one that once stole our hearts? Even Jay-Z cheated on Beyonce. Fucking Beyonce. Brad left Jen for his soulmate, Angelina, had 40 children, and then even he got bored and moved on to a woman half his age. Is love so special because it's destined to die? Are we just torturing ourselves for something fleeting? And if so, is it worth it? I'm genuinely asking. Someone please help. I wonder about the interconnectedness of trust and love and how delicately they intertwine. They are so intrinsically linked that one cannot thrive without the other. I've always felt deeply connected to animals. It has never made sense to me that just because we are humans with opposable thumbs and big brains that are predominantly a pain in the ass, we get to rule over all other beings. I also take issue with the 5-day work week, but that's for another soapbox on another day. In 2001, I was so excited in Year 7 science class when we got to perform social experiments on baby chicks. I thought that meant we got to play with them and watch them grow. In fact, it meant separating one out from the rest of the brood and observing his decaying mental health. I mean, what the fuck? I was further disturbed when I heard what happened to the chicks post-abandonment torture. So there I was, 12 years old, learning about the tragedies of the Holocaust in history class, and suddenly I was being trained to torture and kill innocent, adorable babies in science? Appalled, I stormed up to my teacher and demanded to take my chick home. I will not be a 12-year-old Hitler. Sure enough, at the end of the experiment, I was allowed to take home 2 little chicks, much to the dismay of my mother, who would become their primary carer. They were frickin' adorable. Stinky, annoying, and grumpy, but adorable. The only problem was they weren't chickens. They were roosters, and they were nuts. I adopted several more chicks over the years, all of which I inexplicably named Henry, until Henry XIV decided he hated Ben and would attack him at every opportunity. I don't know if you've ever seen a fully grown rooster attack a teenage boy, but it's as hilarious as it's terrifying. That same year, they aired an episode of Survivor in which the cast slaughtered a pig. As a family, we used to gather around and watch the tube of an evening. What a weird time. We'd enjoyed another fantastic episode of Sliders with a young and devastatingly handsome Jerry O'Connell, followed by Survivor. They teased the pig's death for weeks leading up to it, as if it was the event of the century. It felt voyeuristic and gross to me to celebrate ritualistic murder on primetime, but I was just a kid and hadn't yet realized that adults don't have a clue what they're doing. I trusted that they wouldn't do anything that would cause harm. It was just for ratings. Ha! What an innocent idiot. I looked away as it happened, but I heard the pained, terrified squeals. I saw the contestants celebrate, covered in blood and cheering each other on for their victory. I watched my brother and his friend revel in the entertainment, and I just remember feeling sad and hopeless. How is this fun? I wondered. That night, I became vegetarian. Ha! You just ate lasagna for dinner, Ben joked. Yeah, well, starting tomorrow then, duh. Okay, he said, rolling his eyes. I bet you don't last a week. Just watch me, I replied with all the venom of a preteen girl. I thank Ben every day for saying that. Had he not challenged me with failure, I wouldn't have been able to draw on the amount of spiteful energy it took to be veggie for the next 20 years. Not enough, but he doesn't need to know that. These days, I put energy toward fostering felines. They often come to me timid, frightened, or unwell because they have lived in unhealthy environments or shelters for too long. But they inevitably improve given some TLC. I had one shy boy, Mimo, who was so terrified when he arrived that he hid under my bed for 3 weeks straight. I would have to take him food, leave the room, and hope that his bowl would be empty when I came back. I had to be fully guided by him. He never made a peep, so I would listen intently for the slightest of purrs to know if I was on the right track. New voices around the house sent him deeper into hiding, but he was slowly getting used to mine. So I started to announce myself as I entered the room. I never broke my patterns because this was a cat that needed stability to feel safe. I didn't do anything special. I just gave him a safe place to catch his breath, get used to his surroundings, and show him I wasn't a threat. He slowly started to come out from under the bed to explore the great unknown. So brave. He developed a deep trust in both myself and my other foster cat, the latter of which he would allow to clean the muck off his face when he was done enthusiastically hoovering up his food. He started coming to me to tell me, now using his voice rather obnoxiously, when he needed something. Snacks. It was always snacks. He learned he could trust me, and in turn, for him giving me his trust, I never did anything to challenge that. I took care of his fragile heart, because that's what I promised to do when I let him in. Simon choosing to give his attention to another woman when I needed him most was a betrayal. It would be like walking up to my blissfully sleeping cat who has just gifted me with his trust and then booting him across the room. That cat may stick around because he knows I am his source of food, water, shelter, and general survival. But he will never, ever expose the most vulnerable parts of himself to me again. He will never trust me the same way as if I had never hurt him. Like a stray cat, I stuck around, and my wounds were patched up over time. But I never fully trusted him again. My heart would never feel safe again. I didn't even realize how damaging that can be long term. Like tiny little cuts and bruises lining your heart every time your loved one is late. They go out without you or withhold emotion. You are forever questioning, is it happening again? Is he choosing her? Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. Stick around next week. We have chapter 9, I Can't Fit the Feelings In, which is a lyric taken from a Fiona Apple song. So we have that to look forward to. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends and all that good stuff. I will see you next week. Bye, guys.